Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, Senior Fellow at Defense Priorities and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive. So, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, end a war in one day. That's a lofty promise. Can Donald Trump pull it off?
He can make the decision in one day to end it, as opposed to what we've been doing was this open-ended, for as long as it takes so-called strategy to try and help the Ukraine side. He can decide on day one that we're not going down that path. We're going to go down something that can be accomplished, and that is to seek a negotiated settlement on the best terms he can get for Ukraine at the earliest possible moment. But I'm told by one of his senior foreign policy advisors on his campaign staff that he privately admitted that it's the self-evident. The war cannot be won, so it's self-destructive to keep going down a path and pretend otherwise. And he said he is sharply focused on getting the killing stopped immediately. And I think that he at least will, start to change and go in that direction on day one, which I have been arguing the current administration should have done years ago, actually.
But the Ukraine ending the war, the way it stands now winds up with Ukraine losing huge chunks of its very valuable territory, right?
Yeah, John, listen, people say that in the current administration as though there's actually a choice to be made. There is not. This war is militarily lost, and it has been really since the late 2022, and even before this disastrous offensive took place in 2023. It was irrational to keep going down a path that couldn't succeed, and for very fundamental practical reasons. And so now then President Trump is left with the wreckage of that foolish policies that have been done, and he's going to have to try to make something good out of it. But the bottom line that people need to understand, there is no path to where if we just give them more stuff or help it in this way that somehow it's going to change the course on the war. It's not going to. It's irrevocably in Russia's favor.
All right, but then you're rewarding Russia for invading a sovereign nation, aren't you? I mean,
absolutely not. Not rewarding Russia for anything. It's recognizing the reality, because the alternative is to say, well, I don't want him to win, so we're going to keep going down this path. And the one we've been on, John, if we keep going, it's going to be more Ukrainian people killed, and ultimately they will lose the war. That's what the stark reality is. It's not rewarding Putin. It's acknowledging reality and stopping even more Ukrainians from dying in the process. That's where we're at right now. And I know it's unpalatable.
Well, it is. Vladimir Putin, launched that intermediate range ballistic missile. He made the point that this could have, we could put a nuke on one of these. But he's been threatening nuclear weapons use since the beginning of this, and he hasn't resorted to it. Do you actually think he would launch a nuke?
Well, there's a difference in what he said here and what he said in the past. In the past, he has talked about what his strategy is and what his doctrine is for use here. This is materially different, because this time, starting in September, he said, if the U.S. allows long-range weapon systems, that will be a fundamental change, and now it will be the direct participation of the Western forces against our forces. And if that happens, he said, then he reserves the right to take appropriate action, in his words, against those who are participating in it. And what he showed with this launch here, with this conventional warhead that can be a nuclear warhead, is that if you don't listen to me and you keep doing that, then I can now go after your other locations here. And this missile showed our air defense capabilities is not capable of shooting this down. We need to understand that. And if he takes that action, there really is nothing we can do. So it makes no sense to wonder if he's bluffing or not. And let's don't keep going down a path that could lead to an escalation of the war.
But does that amount to appeasement of an international bully?
No, absolutely not. And I hear that all the time. It really gets my blood boiling, because, again, that implies, if you can't appease him, that implies that there's an alternative, that you can say, we're going to ignore what he said and we're going to keep doing what we want, and there won't be a negative consequence. When you're talking about the possibility of nuclear war, you have to respect the nuclear weapons, as he has to respect our nuclear weapons. And our objective is to prevent this from going to nuclear war, not find out where Putin's red line actually is. And since there is no military path to victory, it makes no sense to try to push this in a direction that can't succeed and might get us into a war.
Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thanks for your insights.
Thank you.